Kukui hangs his head low in defeat, still struggling to breathe from the battle, as the thunderous roars of the crowd begin to get silenced by the announcer. With Kukui's Incineroar unable to battle, that makes this year Lily of the Valley Conference winner, Cynthia! The crowd cheers out as Kukui looks up to the woman he had faced, hugging her Garchomp as Incineroar pulls itself up from the ground. Kukui walks up patting his starter on the back, thanking it for a battle well fought, as he shakes his opponent's hand thinking that next time he will win, while looking at the scoreboard, seeing that Flamethrower! The move called snaps Kukui back to the present, where he watches as a massive burst of flames comes straight towards his Ivysaur. Kukui, having very little time to give an order, shouts for Ivysaur to use Vine Whip to jump into the air and avoid the attack. However, Kukui gave the order too late, as the ball of fire soon engulfs the starter Pokemon. Kukui flinches as his grass-type starter lets out a cry of its own name. As the tsunami of fire dissipates, Kukui sees Ivysaur still standing but badly hurt. Knowing Ivysaur is going to be important later in this fight, he recalls the Cantonian starter, apologising for not paying attention. Whistles erupt through the crowd due to such an early switch, as Kukui grabs towards his back pocket, feeling around until he finds his netball, grabbing it and throwing it forward, calling for Vikavolt to come out and use Thunderbolt. As a Stag Beetle Pokemon erupts from its ball, a surge of lightning follows the bug type, striking Dragonite directly. But the Dragon-type Pokemon waves its hand away, disrupting the lightning, having had its multi-scale broken. Kukui, knowing this, shouts for a follow-up Thunderbolt, but Lance tells Dragonite to challenge the blast with a Flamethrower. The two elemental attacks collide, and it becomes clear that the pseudo-legendary's power is superior, but Kukui, stuck in his own mind, doesn't see this soon enough, watching as his Vikavolt is overpowered by the Fire-type attack, the Bug-type falling towards the floor after being hit. Kukui calls out for the Bug-type as it snaps back, starting to fly once more. Lance, now able to tell something is definitely off with his opponent, having studied his matches in preparation for this battle, he can tell something's wrong with the trainer. Unable to call the match off midway through, Lance decides to give Kukui a chance to sort himself out, so shouts for Dragon Dance, as Dragonite begins to spin in place, causing a small tornado to form around it, the crowd screaming out watching this. The move being called even snaps Kukui out of his daze. Knowing that this Dragonite just went from deadly to terrifying, he wants to punish the man for setting up. Kukui uses Bug Buzz, the bug type flying forward and firing off a bug type attack, it connecting, even slowing Dragonite spinning for a second as it flinches at the small amount of pain it's feeling, also feeling itself grow weaker in some aspect, but the surge of energy flowing through it from the Dragon Dance causes Dragonite to shake this feeling away. Having completed its dance, Lance and Dragonite smile as the pseudo-legendary disappears, reappearing in front of Vikavolt with its claws having a purple draconic energy formed around it, slamming its arms down on top of the bug type, sending it crashing into the ground below, with the announcer sharing how Vikavolt is unable to battle, causing a surge of noise to erupt from the arena as fans and Lance scream out in excitement. The sound of that being called is enough to make Kukui lose himself into the depths of his own brain, remembering his fairly recent loss. Kukui is out of usable Pokemon, meaning Hoenn's champion gets to keep his title of the strongest in the region. Let out a cheer for our champion, Steven Stone! Kukui curses under his breath. He had the advantage until Steven used Mega Evolution, just like the Anther. He needs to figure out a way to counter this, otherwise he'll never be able to defeat anyone. The sound of the announcer asking for Kukui to select his next Pokemon brings the man back, as he looks at the crowd in silent anticipation of what Kukui's next Pokemon will be. Kukui, snapping back, reaches into his back pocket and brings forward his Braviary, letting out a proud and mighty declaration of its power with a massive squawk. Looking back to see its trainer slightly out of it, Braviary knows what's going on just by looking at Kukui, so announces its name towards the man, who looks up as the bird gives the trainer a nod of confirmation. Kukui half smiles, happy his Pokemon at least still believe in him. Having been brought out of the darkness of his own life for now, Kukui looks back onto the battlefield, knowing that allowing the +1 Dragonite to stay out on the field is going to cause serious damage, so he needs to get it off the battlefield as soon as he can. Braviary's talons glow orange from a call of superpower, and the bird races forward. Lance smiles at the bold move, ordering for Ice Punch, as the two flying type Pokemon collide with one another, both feeling the power from each other's attacks, but now up close and personal to Dragonite, Kukui calls for a Whirlwind, forcing Dragonite back into its Pokeball and forcing out Aerodactyl. There being a small bit of discourse between trainer and Pokemon, Kukui tries to use it to gain some momentum, calling for Braviary to grab Aerodactyl and throw it into the ground with Crush Claw. The Unovan bird wastes no time, bolting forward and grabbing Aerodactyl by the wings, using its talons before diving down towards the ground, spinning. Aerodactyl tries to break free of Braviary's grip, Lance, believing Braviary's strength should be lowered from the previous super tower, but as much as the prehistoric Pokemon tries, it's unable to break free, soon being slammed into the ground, forming a crater with its body. Kukui, feeling the flow of battle shifting into his favour, gains some composure back, shouting for Braviary to keep up the good work, the Unovan Pokemon screaming out. Lance and Aerodactyl, having gained a chance to click into battle and finally syncing up with one another, Lance uses this moment of peace to fire off a Stealth Rocks. With the flap of Aerodactyl's wings, sharp stone protrude from the ground on Kukui's side of the battlefield. Kukui, not wanting to sit thinking too much on this, calls for one more superpower. Lance, not wanting to let Braviary get too close, uses Dragon Pulse with Aerodactyl, firing the attack off while it takes to the air, but Braviary weaves through the attacks, gaining more and more ground on the champion's Pokemon, until being a few feet in front of it, slamming its talons into the chest of its opponent. But Aerodactyl doesn't stop firing off its Dragon Pulse, aiming its mouth downwards using its long leg to angle it correctly, firing the blast down on top of the valiant Pokemon, the attack being critical due to being a backstrike, knocking Braviary out of the sky, the bird landing roughly onto the ground, but still stands ready to fight. But Kukui knows that his stats are lowered massively by now, so he wants to finish off Aerodactyl now and get Braviary back out of the battle to get some rest. So wanting to finish this quick, he calls for a Brave Bird. Braviary, hearing this, takes flight to gain altitude as fast as it possibly can, while Lance orders for Aerodactyl to begin charging up a Stone Edge and fire it off just before Braviary makes contact. The fossil Pokemon follows its order, forming jagged rocks around itself, following Braviary as it breaches the outside of the battlefield dome before turning around and diving towards Aerodactyl, getting coated in a bright cobalt flame. As Braviary gets within a few feet of striking distance of Aerodactyl, the fossil Pokemon releases the attack as the powerful rock-type attack collides with Braviary, causing Braviary to squawk out in pain. However, the valiant Pokemon shows how it earned its name as it continues to push through the attack as what feels like thousands of stones are hurled at the Pokemon. Braviary continues to gain ground and gets faster and faster and faster as it pushes through the attack, soon slamming the tip of its beak into the centre of Aerodactyl's body. An explosion follows the attack, shortly joined by the limp body of Aerodactyl falling out of the sky and landing on the ground with a hefty thud, while Braviary soars out, flying and floating in front of Kukui, covered in bruises but having won. As Lance recalls Aerodactyl, Kukui screams out a thanks to Braviary. Fans of Kukui scream out a cheer of victory and praise towards the bird as Kukui recalls it, telling it to get some rest, before grabbing another Pokeball, feeling the flow now in his favour and the adrenaline rushing through him. Kukui wants to keep pushing with the momentum he's gained, and he's going to use a Pokemon he knows will match his pumped up energy. He shouts out Incineroar. Kukui's ace lands on the battlefield, letting out a roar of readiness, only to wince slightly in pain as the previous Stealth Rocks dig into its feet. Kukui smiles truly for the first time all battle, having forgotten what was trapping him in the depths of his mind for a few seconds, only to feel the dark grasp of his self-doubt grip him hard as Lance announces his next Pokemon. A shout of Charizard bursts through the arena, followed by the scream of 1,000 fans. Kukui goes pale at this, thinking back to his most recent loss, the straw which almost broke the Numal's back, thinking of facing down the giant, building-sized Charizard, having no Pokemon left, and worst of all, having only taken down 2 of his opponent's Pokemon. Kukui's hands begin to shake, clearly nervous. Not making a call for a move, Lance takes liberty to make the first one, calling for an air slash. With the flap of its wings, the fire-breathing lizard sends sharp blades of air towards Incineroar. Incineroar, waiting to get a command only to not get one, is barraged by the serrated wind. Kukui doesn't respond to this. All he can think about is his failures, all of his losses repeated over and over again in his mind. All he wanted to do was impress him. All he wanted to do was show him, the person he looks up to most in the world, how strong he is and how much he has grown. Even if he doesn't know how, and in the past, he's just made a fool of himself. Maybe he should have stayed in Alola, become a professor like he wanted to. Maybe this champion life isn't for him. Maybe Guzma was right. He isn't worthy of being champion. Lance, seeing Kukui once again lost in his mind, apologises, but he's already given the man an opportunity to try and sort himself out, having thought he had managed to do so. But now he is going to fight regardless of if Kukui is going all out, giving Charizard the order to continue his assault of using Air Slash. Incineroar lifts its arms to block the incoming aerial assault, its eyes looking backwards, confused about what its partner is doing. All the while, Kukui doubts himself even more and more, feeling his hands shake from a combination of fear and anxiety Now more than ever, Kukui considers throwing in the towel, calling the match as the crowd begins to cheer at Charizard's air/barrage. However, a set of voices pierce through the crowd. Looking to his left and right, he can't spot them until he looks up to the first class booth, spotting Hala, Bernadette and Ash, all partly hanging out of the booth, shouting one thing: "You can do this, don't give up." Kukui scans through each of them, happy they still believe in him. Looking back onto the battlefield and then the scoreboard, he realises he hasn't made a fool of himself in front of him yet, and he's sure he wouldn't see those previous losses as something to get hung over, but to learn from. Kukui knows he should just learn from these past mistakes, but it's not that simple. He's been doing this for a long time, and he's lost so many times. Kukui's eyes wander to Incineroar, the fire cat smiling brightly at its trainer, licking out a declaration of its name, and Kukui can see his Pokemon covered in bruises, but still trusting him, even after all of their losses, even after everything he's done, even after him almost throwing this battle. Kukui can feel his blood boil in annoyance with himself, and then he feels a surge of battle readiness flow through him, as Ash screams out louder than anyone for Kukui to kick Lance's butt. Kukui smiles, wanting to show the trainer who inspired him to be everything he is today what he is truly capable of. Kukui, without missing a beat, shouts for Incineroar to use Cross Chop on the ground to create a shield for itself. Incineroar follows the orders without wasting a second, slamming its arms overlapped with one another into the shape of an X into the ground, causing rocks to protrude from the earth fast, creating cover for the Fire Cat to hide behind, allowing it to breathe for a second. Lance, wanting to keep up the pressure, calls for Charizard to fire off a Flame Blast. Kukui, having an idea of how to beat Charizard, knows he needs to draw him in, so orders for a Blast Burn to counter the Flame Blast. As Incineroar jumps on top of the rocks it was using as a shield to fire off its own powerful Fire Blast. The two attacks clash for a second before Incineroar's stronger fire move wins out, hitting Charizard but dealing very little damage. Lance, now knowing that Incineroar is unable to move for a few seconds, calls for a Focus Punch, as the Fire Lizard's fist begins to glow with an orange energy as it dive bombs towards Incineroar, who was unable to move, soon finding itself on the receiving end of a powerful Focus Punch. Lance, thinking this should be the finishing blow, Incineroar begins to slump into Charizard's shoulder, ever so slightly. Lance looks at Kukui, who only smiles, as Incineroar's covered with a red aura and begins to lift its arms above its head in the shape of an X. Lance tries to order Charizard to escape, but the command of Cross Chop is swiftly followed by the execution of the move. Charizard is hit hard in the back, dealing critical damage as Charizard sent slamming into the jagged rocks Incineroar was standing on, and using for cover only a few seconds prior, increasing the damage Incineroar inflicts on its fellow fire starter. As Incineroar jumps back to gain some distance, Charizard slowly pulls itself out of the rubble, as Lance realises that Kukui had planned to take the Focus Punch in order to bring Charizard into striking distance. Charizard pulls itself back onto its feet, about to take flight, but Kukui refuses to let that happen, ordering Incineroar to finish this off with a Darkness Lariat. The Alola starter starts running forward before spinning, its hands covered in fire, as it slams into Charizard, knocking the Cantonian starter backwards. Charizard is brought down to its knees once again, looking like it will be fine before falling face first, spirals in its eyes. The crowd erupts in excitement while everyone in Kukui's booth screams out louder than anyone. Lance looks forward, spotting the opponent he was looking forward to facing. Really now, Lance can't help but wonder if he's shown up too late, since half of Kukui's team has taken some serious damage in some form, whereas his 4 remaining Pokemon are mostly unharmed. Kukui apologises to Incineroar before thanking it, finally recalling it, telling it to rest up for the final bout. Both trainers excited to get back into the battle grab a Pokeball ready, as Lance brings his Dragonite back into the arena, while Kukui smiles, throwing forward a Pokeball, revealing his Alolan Ninetales. The Pokemon's beauty captivates the crowd for a second before Kukui gives them on an order. The Frozen Fox opens its mouth, firing off an Ice Beam towards Kanto's pseudo-legendary. Lance, not wanting to find himself on the receiving end of the stab Ice Beam, calls for a Flamethrower, with the 2 elemental attacks clashing before Dragonite's Flamethrower starts winning the clash, soon hitting the Alolan variant, but it's not enough to put down the Ice type, as Kukui orders for Ninetales to use Disable, as the Fox Pokemon's eyes flash red, preventing any further use of Flamethrower. Kukui then orders an Ice Beam, as Ninetales fires off the attack, as Dragonite tries to dodge the move at the order of its trainer, which it very nearly does. However, its wings are clipped by the Ice attack and begin to freeze over, making the Dragon type begin to plummet towards the ground. Lance, seeing this, orders Dragonite to use Dragon Dance continuously, as the Pokemon begins to spin as it falls towards the ground, making a small gust of air which allows Dragonite to stop its fall before it hits the ground, saving it from a rough landing and now benefiting from a massive boost in speed and strength. But before Lance can benefit from the boost, a call for Encore comes from the opposite side of the arena as Ninetales begins to clap its tails together as the light bursts from them, wrapping around Dragonite and limiting the Pokemon's moveset to Dragon Dance for the time being. Lance, being familiar with the move, knows that his Dragonite is in a very unfavourable matchup, and instead of risking his strongest mon, he recalls Dragonite, bringing out a Pokemon which is new to his roster, Aggron. The metallic Pokemon lands, shaking the ground, and the crowd murmurs at the new Pokemon to Lance's roster, since it's going against his whole dragon flying theme. On the other hand, Kukui only sees this as a smart move from the Cantonian champion. His Fairy and Ice weakness is covered by one Pokemon. Having that thought, he recalls Ninetales, bringing out his own Steel type in Empoleon. The Emperor Pokemon comes out, feeling the effects of the Stealth Rock, but grinds its flippers together, signalling its readiness to fight. Aggron moves fast, running forward, having it lowered its head to use Head Smash. The metallic mon moves faster than anyone is expecting, closing the distance between itself and Empoleon in only a few seconds as it slams its steel helmet into the chest of Empoleon, knocking the Sinnoh starter backwards a few feet, its flippers hardly able to find some footing. Kukui, seeing this, knows that there will be some backlash from using the move, only to watch Aggron stand unfazed. Lance orders for another Head Smash. The surprisingly fast Steel type moves like a train racing forward, its steel dome glowing blue. Kukui, not wanting to get pushed around, orders for Empoleon to use Water Pole to propel itself into the air. Empoleon creates a small, constantly shifting pool of water in its flippers before throwing it towards the ground below itself, the attack expanding and lifting the Sinnoh starter into the air and launching it into the sky ever so slightly. The move has the side benefit of Aggron running into the base of the attack, taking a small chunk of damage before the attack disappears. Empoleon, now airborne for a few seconds, is ordered to use Hydro Cannon. The Emperor collects a ball of water in its mouth before firing it down towards Aggron. Lance doesn't give an order as the cannon bowl of water crashes into the chest of the iron armoured Pokemon. As shards of its iron hide fall off its body, Lance calls out for a metal burst, as the small shards of metal glow silver for a few seconds before darting towards Empoleon, hitting the Pokemon just as it lands on the ground. The force of the metal burst sends Empoleon flying into the arena wall, knocking it out. Kukui grits his teeth while Lance smiles as his Aggron falls down to one knee, hardly being able to survive the Hydro Cannon. However, Lance then watches as the water droplets coating Aggron's body rapidly rotate around Aggron, as the Whirlpool side effects kick in, dealing a small chunk of damage, making Aggron fall forward, knocked out. The announcer calls out that a double KO has happened, putting out how Lance is down to 3 Pokemon, 2 of which have yet to be seen, while most of Kukui's 4 remaining Pokemon have seen battle and taken some serious damage, asking the crowd who they believe will win, as they all scream out a mixed match name of Kukui and Lance. The 2 trainers share a smile, Lance thanking Kukui for finally joining him in the battle for real, but tells him it's far too late. Kukui just tells Lance that the battle isn't over until the Munchlax sings, grabbing a Pokeball and bringing his Braviary back out to battle. The bird still damaged from the battle with Aerodactyl but ready to fight, happy to see Kukui's serious face. However, the Pokemon soon finds itself on the receiving end of Stealth Rock damage, which had been previously set up, as the rocks erupt from the ground, floating around Braviary before colliding with the bird, but this doesn't put it down. As Braviary sits waiting for its opponent, Lance doesn't keep it waiting for long, bringing out his Dragonite once again, whose wing is still frozen over. Kukui asks Braviary if it's ready, the bird just nods, and starting the battle off with a tailwind. As a surge of wind races through the arena, everyone amazed at its power, before Lance gives his order of a flamethrower to melt the ice covering Dragonite's wing. But before the dragon can even open its mouth, Braviary hits the mon with a Crush Claw, winding the dragon, the attack having more power due to the massive speed increase Braviary is feeling, and just as Dragonite locks eyes with Braviary, the Pokemon disappears in the wind. Kukui, knowing Dragonite is borderline useless while grounded, doesn't want to give the pseudo-legendary a chance to escape, so tells Braviary to continue hitting Dragonite with Crush Claw. Lance thinks about recalling Dragonite, but then has an idea on how to free them on, telling Dragonite to guard and wait for his word. Dragonite lifts its arms up to defend itself, while Braviary lands multiple Crush Claws, the damage clearly stacking up on the pseudo-legendary over the next few seconds, as the Pokemon reappears, doing some damage with Crush Claw and then disappears once more. Braviary begins to slow down over time due to fatigue and battle damage, so Kukui, wanting to make sure that he ends this battle fast, goes for a much more powerful move, telling Braviary to use Superpower. As Braviary pulls away for just a second, its talons go from white to orange and the valiant Pokemon goes to hit Dragonite in the chest. However, Lance orders Dragonite to use its wings, which are frozen, to defend itself. Dragonite does so, managing to block the oncoming fighting type attack with its frozen wing, nullifying most of the damage and also shattering the ice. Seeing the dragon having broke free, Kukui orders Braviary to get away. The bird Pokemon is about to take flight to avoid any oncoming damage. Dragonite quickly cuts in front of it, preventing it from escaping, before hitting it with an Ice Punch. The move being super effective and too much for the weakened Braviary, it's finally able to put the bird down. Kukui recalls Braviary, thanking it for such a strong performance and giving him a chance to take down Dragonite. Kukui lifts his hat off his head, feeling the winds blowing through his hair, knowing that the Tailwind is still active. Kukui, wanting to use the last few turns of Tailwind to his advantage, brings out Ninetales, the Frost Fox ready to finish the dragon, as it is then bombarded by stones from the Stealth Rocks. Lance knows this matchup is unfavourable, but he can see that Dragonite is nearing the end of its rope, and thinks he can at least get some damage in. Dragonite flies forwards, ice formed around its fist. Kukui, seeing this, orders for an encore, as Dragonite is now forced into using Ice Punch on repeat, with the dragon slamming its frozen fist into Ninetales' face, the attack doing some damage but not a lot. Lance tells Dragonite to keep barraging the fox with Ice Punch, not giving it a chance to use anything else, knowing that Encore will eventually end, so he wants to keep up the pressure until then. So Dragonite follows trainer's orders, continuing to throw punch after punch after punch into the fox, hoping to deal some damage worthwhile, but Kukui has no intention to let this keep happening, and after the third or fourth punch, orders for a disabled, stopping the Dragonite in its tracks, as Dragonite watches the ice around its fist melt to water, which splashes on the ground. Lance calls for Dragonite to fly away, but the Pokemon seemingly is frozen in place, struggling to move. Kukui, seeing this, decides to end the battle here, using Ice Beam point blanking to Dragonite's chest, the beam slowly covering Dragonite's body in ice, then knocking it out, ending this round. The crowd is amazed to see Lance having lost his ace, all watch wondering what Pokemon comes next, but Lance is unfazed as he brings out his next Pokemon, Tyranitar. As a sandstorm kicks up as the Pokemon touches the arena floor, it knocks away the Tailwind, preventing it from lasting any longer. Kukui and Ninetales cover their eyes to adjust to the storm, but Lance gives them no time to do so, calling for Tyranitar to use Stomping Tantrum. Tyranitar jumps into the air before slamming back down into the earth, using all of its weight and power, causing thousands of shards of rock to be sent flying towards Ninetales, who was unable to avoid the oncoming attack due to not being able to see. This deals colossal damage, and to avoid getting hit by another super effective attack like that again, Kukui orders a disable, stopping any more of them coming towards them. Lance, on the other hand, isn't bothered by this, using Dark Pulse instead, the Dark-type Pokemon firing off the attack, which also hits its mark, as Ninetales struggles to see or move in the sandstorm. Kukui wants to turn the battle back into his favour, but he has no way of doing so, with the sand stored up. As Kukui ponders for a few seconds, he finally has an idea on how to get rid of this sandstorm, and he has to wait for the perfect opportunity. So he stands silently, waiting patiently, not giving an order. Lance, unsure of what Kukui is planning, tries to finish the problematic fox with a final Hyper Beam. As Tyranitar uses the move, Kukui tells Ninetales to charge up a Moonblast and hit the Hyper Beam at the very last second. The fox follows the orders, building up the attack and finally firing off the Moonblast just before the Hyper Beam collides with it. As the two attacks make contact, they struggle against one another for a few seconds before an explosion erupts from the sandstorm, clearing it away and revealing Tyranitar and Ninetales. Looking onto the battlefield, Kukui has a clear shot on Tyranitar, ordering for Ninetales to fire off another Moonblast. Quickly doing so, the Alola variant fires off the attack, hitting the pseudo-legendary square in the chest, dealing super effective damage. Kukui, hoping that he can finish off Tyranitar now that he can finally see him, gets a true look at the condition his Ninetales is in, and the Pokemon is hardly able to stand. Clearly taking the Stomping Tantrum and having got caught up in the explosion has done some serious damage. Kukui goes to recall them on but is too slow to do so, as Lance, finally able to move once again, orders another Hyper Beam, the attack this time connecting and knocking out Ninetales. Kukui thanks Ninetales for doing amazingly, before he finally feels like the advantage he had been building up is fading away underneath him, with each mon he loses. But Kukui shakes his feeling away, he knows he can win, he won't give up just yet, as he grabs a Pokeball, bringing back into battle Ivysaur, the Cantonian starter having gotten a good chance to rest and recover from its quick battle with Dragonite, and is now ready to put in the work. Starting the battle off with a sunny day, the bulb on Ivysaur's back glows brightly for a few seconds before the grass type fires off the fire type attack, releasing a small artificial sun into the air. the move lighting up the entire arena. And with Tyranitar starting to move once more, Kukui gets a chance to use a Solar Beam, the attack charging instantly before firing it off, and the attack colliding with the chest of Tyranitar, doing some serious damage. But Lance doesn't let this go unpunished, ordering for a Dragon Tail, as Johto's pseudo-legendary stomps over towards Ivysaur, its tail glowing blue, as it begins to swing around its attack, desperately trying to hit Ivysaur. However, Ivysaur is surprisingly agile for a Pokemon of its stature, benefiting greatly from its hidden ability and the sun. It allows it to move even faster, dodging all oncoming attacks, as Lance continues to fire off Dragon Tails and Dragon Tail and Dragon Tail, desperately trying to hit Ivysaur and get it out of the arena quickly, knowing that a Dragon Tail will force Kukui to bring in Incineroar, but he's unable to land a single hit, and Kukui can tell that Ivysaur is finally getting accustomed to dodging. Seeing a chance to use a move, Kukui orders a Grass Knot to trip Tyranitar up. Ivysaur uses the move, causing the weeds below Tyranitar's feet to twist and tie a knot around the Pokemon's foot. As Tyranitar turns to try and hit Ivysaur, it is caught in the grass knot and falls over, landing on its back. Being unable to move for a few seconds, Kukui sees an opening to try and finish this battle, as he tells Ivysaur to jump into the air and aim its ball downwards, firing off a Solar Beam. This attack lands squarely in the centre of Tyranitar's chest, knocking the Mon out, bringing Lance down to his last Pokemon. The crowd begins to chant in excitement at what Lance is packing as his final Mon, while Lance smiles, telling Kukui that his last Mon and he went through very special training to ensure their victory, so he hopes Kukui is ready. Throwing a Pokeball forwards, and before the Pokemon is even seen, the scream is heard, almost rupturing everyone's eardrums, as a blood-red Gyarados hits the battlefield, the serpent wrapping its tail inwards as it locks eyes with the small Ivysaur snack. Kukui can tell just by looking at the Mon that it's strong. Telling Ivysaur to be ready, the seed Pokemon lowers its body to the ground, announcing its name in readiness. Wanting the battle to begin, Kukui moves first, already having a plan, telling Ivysaur to fire off another sunny day to keep the sun in the sky for just a bit longer. The starter does so, elongating the sun's shine. In return, this Gyarados fires back with an earthquake. The whole arena shakes at the power of this Pokemon, which makes Ivysaur scream out in pain, but the grass type stubbornly hangs on, not wanting to go down just yet. It wants to make sure that it can rival its teammates. Kukui tells Ivysaur to run forward and use Leech Seed to start chipping away at the Mon's health. Ivysaur does so. Its speed, still benefiting from the sun, allows it to close the gap between itself and Gyarados, firing 3 seeds out of its bulb which wrap around the serpent's tail. Gyarados in return fires off a powerful Aqua Tail, knocking the grass type into the sky. The Pokemon now flying high in the sky above the atrocious Pokemon, Ivysaur struggles to see straight, but wanting to do a bit more damage, wanting to help out its trainer just a bit more, begins to charge a Solar Beam at the request of its trainer, and thanks to being so close to the sunny day, it takes mere seconds before it's charged, the attack firing off into the face of the giant sea serpent before finding itself on the receiving end of another Aqua Tail, this time being slammed into the arena wall, knocked out. Both announcer and spectators all watch, excited to see what happens next, with both trainers down to the last Pokemon, but Kukui at a clear disadvantage in type and damage taken in his Pokemon. Kukui feels the nerves fire back up slightly, but as if sensing this, Incineroar bursts out of its Pokeball, letting out a roar hiding the pain it feels from the Stealth Rocks, allowing the fire to burst off its body, signalling that Blaze is active and ready to go, before turning to its trainer giving it a thumbs up, making Kukui smile as he smacks his face, thinking he isn't out of this yet, shouting out to Lance that the battle is far from over before pulling out a red crystal from his pocket and slapping it in his Z-ring. Lance seeing this smile, saying that if Kukui is going to bring it, then so should he, as he turns his collar downwards, revealing a keystone, which is embedded into the collar. As he then shouts out to his Gyarados, asking if it's ready, the Mon returns a massive screech as a bright light erupts from Lance, coating Gyarados as Mega Evolution begins to take place. Lance announces to the world that they are looking at his new ace Pokemon, and this Pokemon was designed to challenge any other fancy gimmick, whether it be Dynamax or Z moves. Gyarados will prove right here and right now that Mega Evolution is the key to victory. As the Mega Evolution finishes, Gyarados' new form is revealed, the stadium going silent at his presence, all the while Incineroar's blaze cuts out, making both trainer and Pokemon chuckle nervously, before Kukui just smiles while he looks up, knowing it's not needed, as he just sees the sun is still active. Lance wanting to finish this battle before Kukui can use the move, uses Aqua Tail as Gyarados covers the distance between itself and Incineroar in what feels like mere seconds, in the blink of an eye almost, going to take the Fire Cat out in one attack. Kukui, however, orders Incineroar to counter the attack with a cross chop. The Alola starter, Loyal, doesn't hesitate, slamming its arms into the aquatic demon's tail. The two moves clash for a second before Incineroar is sent skidding across the arena, but having softened the blow from the Aqua Tail. Lance, trying to keep up the pressure, orders an Earthquake, and Kukui, having felt the power of the last one, has no interest in finding out how much damage it would now do, Mega Evolve. So, thinking quick on his feet, he orders Incineroar to fire itself into the air using a Blast Burn. The cat does so, just as the Earthquake is fired off, which can be felt all across the region. Luckily, the heal Pokemon is able to avoid the attack by being in the sky, something your Lance is quick to take advantage of, using Crunch to grab the Pokemon out of the air and hold it tightly in Gyarados' mouth. Incineroar begins to get crushed by the giant serpent's mouth. Kukui can't help but see an opportunity to get some damage in, so orders a Flare Blitz. Incineroar's body is coated in fire as it slams its fist into the upper side of the serpent's mouth. For a few seconds it looks like nothing happens, before Gyarados' entire body erupts into flame, having been burnt from the attack. This causes the Sea Serpent to drop Incineroar as it struggles at the heat it is feeling, allowing Incineroar a chance to move again. Kukui wanted to get some more damage in, orders a cross shot. As Incineroar begins to run up the tail of Gyarados, while running up the tail it steps on the Leech Seed which Ivysaur had previously inflicted, allowing itself to get some healing in as it runs up the body of Gyarados, getting to its face and jumping down using cross chop on the nose of the Pokemon, dealing some serious damage, making Gyarados scream out in pain as Incineroar jumps away. However, the Pokemon lands on the ground in a huff. It's reaching its limit, something both trainers can tell. Kukui, seeing the sun beginning to fade, knows this is the last chance he will get, so he extends his arm, shouting out for Incineroar to be ready. Lance, seeing what Kukui is trying to do, tries to prevent it, once again using Aqua Tail to send the Pokemon into the air. However, this time Incineroar finds itself reaching way beyond the roof of the arena and almost touching the clouds. Lance thinks that had to have ended the battle, but Kukui tells Lance that he should have learnt from Ivysaur that just sending them Skybile won't stop their attack. Lance watches as yellow lights burst from the Z-Ring and race upwards out of the arena. Kukui pulls his arms back, waving them upwards twice before gripping his wrist with one hand, and with the other he points his palm towards the now falling Incineroar, who is completely covered in fire and forming a giant red spear, the heat of which begins to warm up the entire arena, even causing some areas of it to melt, as Kukui shouts out that him and Incineroar have a promise to uphold and he won't be backing down. Lance, knowing what's coming, orders a Hyper Beam to counter the attack, but Kukui smiles, shouting out Inferno Overdrive. As Incineroar throws the attack downwards towards Gyarados, the Sea Serpent fires off a Hyper Beam. The two attacks clash at the dome of the arena, the force of which almost knocks the entire building's roof off. As the two attacks clash for 2 seconds, Kukui calls out for Incineroar to use Flare Bits to give the Inferno Overdrive a boost. Incineroar's body bursts into flame as it kicks off the rim of the arena, diving straight into the Inferno Overdrive. As Inferno Overdrive and Incineroar begin to cut through Hyper Beam like a hone edge through butter. When the attack hits Gyarados, an explosion happens, kicking up a massive dust storm, blinding everyone as Lance and Kukui both stand calmly, waiting to see who came out the victor. The dust still blocking everyone's vision after a whole minute of waiting, the ref moves in to look and give the call as the stadium stays silent, waiting to hear the results. Bernadette and Hala cross their fingers, praying for Kukui, while Ash and Torracat hang out of the booth window, staring, never moving their eyes from where they last saw Incineroar, both whispering Incineroar's name. As the ref's voice comes through over the speakers, the winner of this battle is Kukui and Incineroar! As the smoke settles, showing Gyarados having deformed from its Mega State, and Incineroar on one knee but awake. The stadium erupts into excitement, but nowhere more than Kukui's booth, as Bernadette screams like a schoolgirl, and Ash and Torracat dance around with one another, shouting with excitement. Even Hala lets out a smile of well done. All the while, Kukui looks around slightly stunned before it finally clicks into place as he sees Incineroar still standing. He rushes forward with a smile plastered across his face, screaming out that they have done it, as the trainer and Pokemon embrace in a hug before Incineroar's pain finally catches up with it, causing the Pokemon to fall onto one knee once more, Kukui allowing the Mon to rest its weight on him before turning to see Lance, comforting his Gyarados. Smiling at the sight, he walks forward, telling Lance that it was an amazing battle, causing the former champion to smile as he tells Kukui he was warned by the other champions not to underestimate him, even though he was on a losing streak. Cynthia, Leon, Alder, Diantha, Steven, all of them spoke so highly of the trainer, but not one of their descriptions was close. His power was truly next level. Even his newly acquired Mega Evolution wasn't enough this time, but he promises Kukui that he'll be back for his former title, making Kukui smile as he extends his hand, saying he can't wait, but next time, the outcome will be the same. As the flashes of cameras burst from the front row of the stadium, Lance tells Kukui to enjoy himself, since he won't be there for long. The pair share a nod as Lance walks off. Kukui walks back into his side of the arena, waving on his way out, once making it inside of his waiting room. He brings out his mons to share the good news. His entire team cheer in celebration, while Kukui thanks them all and apologises for not having his head in the game from the beginning, and he thanks them for sticking it out with him. As they begin to dogpile the professor, giving him hugs, licks, kisses, anything his Pokemon can do to show their affection, the sound of a door being flung open echoes throughout the room. As the excited Torracat and Bernadette race forward, Torracat jumping up to hug its parent, purring loudly while Bernadette jumps into her partner's arms, saying how proud she is of him, and how much she knew he could do it. As the pair share a hug, Kukui thanks his partner for always being there for him, and apologises for it taking him so long to realise that he shouldn't doubt himself. As another set of footsteps are heard, Kukui looks over to see Ash being held up by his collar by Hala, who tells the boy to give Bernadette and Kukui a moment, but Ash struggles, saying he wants to congratulate Kukui as well. Kukui, seeing this, can't help but remember being held like that when he got excited. As he tells Hala it's fine, the Cantonian trainer is Jot, who then runs up to Kukui, going to say how amazing the battle is. But before Ash can even utter a syllable, Kukui wraps his arms around him and asks if he saw that. Ash is confused and isn't sure what to say. As a second passes, he eventually finds himself shouting out that he couldn't take his eyes off the battle. When Ash says this, he could swear he hears Kukui sniffling, as if holding back tears, but the man pulls away from the hug. Having tears built up in his eyes, he says that he thanks Ash for cheering so loudly for him, saying that he will make sure to cheer twice as loud during Ash's league battle, making the trainer blush a little bit. Bernadette smiles softly at this, while Hala shouts out that he's proud of his student. The tears that had formed in Kukui's eyes fade away as he asks Hala to let his Pokemon back in Alola know of the victory, and how he wishes they were here. The old Kahuna nods as he explains that he's already got a message from his grandson saying the whole island is in celebration, and none more than his Pokemon. Kukui smiles at hearing this as the group take in the moment of Kukui's victory, before Lorelei walks in apologising for bothering the new champ, but there's a couple hundred reporters waiting to interview the man, and he needs to take his stand at the podium before he leaves tonight. Alongside that, he has to go over some official league stuff, but that can all wait till tomorrow. Hearing this, Kukui laughs nervously, saying how he wasn't expecting to have so many jobs at the start. Lorelei gives Kukui a funny look as she asks him if he's ready to take his stand at the victory podium. He nods as his Pokemon and himself walk out onto the now completely destroyed battlefield. As Ash, Bernadette and Hala watch from the doorway of Kukui's waiting room, they watch the man climb up the podium, his Pokemon surrounding him. As the announcer begins to speak. Today we don't only celebrate the most amazing battle this stadium has ever seen, but we get the privilege of crowning the new Indigo League champion. Having fought hundreds of battles, clawed his way to the top, strongest trainer Alola has ever produced, the professor of battles. Give it up for our new champion, Kukui. As Kukui lifts the trophy above his head, his Pokemon celebrating all around him, the days following blur by for the new champ, as he finds himself going through a couple hundred interviews, it feels like, finding himself registering himself and his team into the Hall of Fame, and then finally he arranges his new Elite Four and League, having to find new replacements for Lance and Agatha. Lance leaving to head off to train, while Agatha leaves due to retirement, all the while looking for a new 8th gym leader. After a few days of discussion with the Elite Four and the Council of the Indigo League, finally having a roster set up, they send out letters letting people know who's getting promoted, people who have already wanted the jobs, and also having an idea of how to deal with the 8th gym leader missing position, at least for the time being. It might be inconvenient, but for now it'll work, as it's all set to be announced publicly in 2 weeks' time when Kukui returns for Alola after having settled his affairs. as we find Ash sat on a plane looking out of a window over the open ocean, 4 islands off in the distance. Looking to his left, he spots Kukui, telling the boy, "Welcome to Alola." Kukui and Bernadette smile at the kid's face, who begins to light up with excitement seeing the island.
But while Hala feels conflicted, he's excited to be returning home, but is sad that this could be Kukui's last adventure in Alola for a long time. However, he hasn't ever been more proud of his student, and he knows he'll do great things as a champion. Meanwhile, outside of Celadon City, in a Pokemon Center a few days away, a man rests his feet on the table, looking up to watch the final moments of Kukui's battle with Lance. Seeing the Alola native win causes the man to tut loudly. As he stands up shouting out, "They're bouncing, this place is really boring, besides, they don't want to keep Blondie waiting any longer." As a small mob of people stop terrorising the Pokemon Center, a mob forms around the man as a woman with pink hair asks what their plan is. The man just smiles, saying, "It's simple, they're going to ruin the good professor's new championhood by tearing this league down he fought so desperately to become the champion of." As the man smiles, everyone begins to chant his name of Guzma, as the group leaves the Pokemon Center completely trashed. As Nurse Joy calls Officer Jenny, trying to get some help to deal with the hooligans, the group heads off towards Celadon City, looking forward to seeing what new HQ Blondie picked out for them. And that, my friends, is where we're leaving the story for now. I hope everyone enjoyed the Season 1 final of What If Kukui Trained Ash. I really enjoy writing for this series, and this one was interesting to write for, to say the least. Most of it was battling, and I do apologise if that was a bit boring for some people. However, I wanted to make sure that the power of this battle came across, and I think I did an alright job of doing that. So I hope people understand why it was like this. As for when the next part will be coming, I will probably have a little break from this series. Maybe fill the gap with another What If. I'm not sure what If yet. I have 2 other Pokemon What If scripted, mostly, and planned out, so I might put up a poll to see if people want either of them to be the next series to come out on the channel. And I might do something with What If Goku was in Naruto. I'm not really sure at the minute. I'll probably put, like I said, a poll will likely come up. That all being said, I do hope everyone enjoyed this part, and please give it love, as I am looking forward to coming back and showing you all what the rest of my story I have planned out is. That all being said, I hope everyone has a great day or a good night, and hopefully I'll see you next time.